guys, and welcome back to another collection of games based on movies that don't suck. And pretty much all of these were taken from comments on the previous video, so don't ever say your comments don't matter, at least around here anyway. And due to that, these are all games that I have actually never played as a kid, so I'm not going into any of these with previous experience or those nostalgia glasses to sway me. These are just my opinions after getting as far as I could while still having time to make this video. So please don't condemn me to a life of crime if I happen to miss a detail here or there in some of these. In fact, if I do, then please let me know in the comments. But with that out of the way, let's get the movie train rolling once again with by far the most recommended game that I have ever received on this channel. True Lies for the Super NES is one of those games that you never thought you needed to play, but ends up surprising you with a way better game than what you expected. Of course, True Lies for the Super NES is based on the 1994 movie of the same name. I remember seeing trailers for this one back in the day, and I can honestly say that I wasn't super excited to watch it, since besides having Mr. Schwarzenegger in it, it just kind of looked like every other action movie that I'd seen in the 80s and early 90s. But my dad ended up renting this one night, and by the time the credits rolled, I was thoroughly entertained. It was a really unique take on the over-the-top action movies of the time, with plenty of fun characters and humor to push things along, which was actually my favorite thing about the whole movie.
You know, maybe a little.
But when I saw the game sitting on the shelf at the video store, I kind of noticed something on the front of the box. And no matter how much I liked the movie, I wasn't about to risk my hard-earned $4 on an LJN game. But I can't say that I wasn't curious. The back of the box made it seem like it was a decent-looking top-down action game, and that stuff was right up my alley at the time. And according to the dozens of comments in the previous movie game video, it's one that I definitely should have taken a risk on. So I'm going to correct that apparent mistake right now. Get into True Lies and you're met with exactly what you'd think it would be, an overhead shooter, which is what I thought it was until I started shooting innocent people and being scolded for it. Turns out there's a little bit more to this game than it lets on, since this first stage actually has you infiltrating a mission, finding a password to unlock a door, and eventually planting a modem for whatever reason on a computer, then blasting your way out of the mansion and onto the slopes while you're dodging enemy snowmobiles and even an honest-to-God military chopper trying to take you out. I mean, if we're talking about first impressions, True Lies ain't too bad. But hold on, let's just calm down a little bit because first impressions are just that, first impressions. What I was expecting though was the reality that set in soon after, because once the novelty of that first stage wears off, you're left with a pretty average playing game. The action's kinda slow and stiff, and it's made even worse by how everyone is apparently on steroids. Even Granny over here looks beefy. But what that equates to are overly large sprites that don't move as fast or with the precision that the game seems to want you to move at. You're a big, beefy target, and it is very easy to get hit from just about everywhere. You can do a rolling dodge to get out of rough situations, but that kind of ends up being a legitimate way to make it through these stages without taking damage. And that's not a good look when ignoring your enemies is an easier way to make it through your game than actually, playing it. Shooting in the game doesn't feel bad since you can strafe around, but your default weapon is the definition of a pea shooter, even making you stop and refill ammo when you finish a clip. You can at least pick up a shotgun and an Uzi that makes you a much more effective secret agent, but you'll need to hunt down ammo if you want to keep using them. And it doesn't help that the game is pretty stingy with those weapons, making you hunt them down in some really rough spots before you're even able to use them. And I can tell you right now that you will need them to make it anywhere after the first few levels. Thankfully, all those enemies that are shooting at you are mostly brain dead, since they kind of just stand around and don't really seem too concerned about getting out of the way of your bullets whenever you shoot at them. But it doesn't take too many bullets to take you down for the count, and you will be taking lots of hits, not only due to the aforementioned beefy character sprite, but also because enemies take way more shots to take down than it seems like they should, leaving you open to taking damage as you awkwardly line yourself up over and over to hit them again. So overall, this game's in like a weird limbo where it wants you to play like a fast-paced shooter while at the same time wanting you to be careful and more methodical. And you better get good at it too, because this game is tough, especially with the sheer amount of bad guys coming at you in later levels. At least there's a decent number of those levels to play through though, and all of them have their own unique mission objectives, doing stuff like blowing up ammo crates or finding key cards. There's even a level like in the movie where you're in a Harrier jet chasing down vehicles on a bridge. I mean, it's short, but it's still cool that it's even in the game. So the question is, did True Lies live up to the hype in the comments? Well, I mean, it's got its issues, but it's really not that bad at all. I came into this expecting an average at best game, and walked away with a game that I'd say is kind of above average. It's not going to win any Game of the Year awards, but you know what? I actually kind of like it. It's got a certain confidence to it that a game like this almost never has, especially coming from someone like LJN. So if you're like me and never played this game before because A, it's from LJN, and B, why would I ever want to play a game based on True Lies, well, do yourself a favor and pick it up. It's a neat little game that won me over more with its charm and humor more than its action did, kinda just like the movie. So bravo, True Lies, you made a believer out of me this time. Judge Dredd for the Super NES ended up being exactly the sequel that I wanted for a totally different game. Judge Dredd was probably the second most recommended game next to True Lies, with this one being recommended more so because it was developed by the same studio that made the way better than it should be Alien 3 for the Super NES, which is one that we also covered in that last video. Only this game is based on the 1994 Stallone comic book flick, which I have actually never seen, but I'm more than willing to check this game out due to how much I just loved Alien 3. And you can immediately see and feel just how similar both of these are to each other. Just like Alien 3, Judge Dredd is a really good-looking game. The sprite work and animation here is just as good as it was in Alien, if not better. The animation on Dredd is easily some of the best on the system, and even the rest of the characters in this game are animated really well too, which is something that I couldn't say about Alien. The stages in Judge Dredd also get a big upgrade here as well, with a ton more variety than we ever had on Alien's cold prison planet. And when I say variety, I mean it here, because there are some wild stages in this game. It starts off pretty tame with a city and the sewers, but pretty soon you'll be fighting through deserts, the Statue of Liberty, labs filled with exploding zombies for whatever reason, a vehicle stage where you're trying to outrun other cops, and this stage which had me just cracking up. It's called The Dead World, but it's such a departure from the rest of the game that I kind of was wondering if I just stepped into the wrong game. It's like you go from fighting just like drug dealers and regular guys in the other levels to being in a burning hellscape where you're fighting lightning skeletons. Like really, if there's anybody that can tell me what this has to do with Judge Dredd, please let me know, because I'm legit curious. Overall though, I love when a game keeps every level distinct, and Dredd really does do a great job here. The only knock that I can give it is because of Dredd's overall busier look to it, since it can kind of make it hard to tell where you're supposed to go or what you can interact with in some of the levels. Now, if you remember that Alien 3 review in the previous movie game video, then you already kind of know how Judge Dredd works, since this game just takes that game's level-based missions and tosses them in here as well. Only this time, instead of having massive multi-area maps to navigate through, Judge Dredd just has one primary mission and one secondary mission for each level. The secondary missions are pretty much always just eliminating or arresting everyone in the stage, while the primary missions task you with doing stuff like blowing up ammo dumps or closing prison doors, among others. And just like Alien 3, there are terminals scattered around each stage so that you can check up on your mission progress if you need to. Some levels though just completely forget about the missions and turn into a standard level where you make your way through to the end and then fight a boss. But the real meat of the game will have you searching around trying to complete your objectives. But even with the smaller focus on individual levels this time, Judge Dredd still suffers from Alien 3's biggest problem with these levels, by making you feel like you're just wandering around a lot if you happen to miss or can't find one of your objectives. Especially since the terminals in Judge Dredd are missing out on Alien 3's super useful map screen, and you really miss that here on some of the larger levels, since this time you just kinda have to hope that you can figure out which random spot or part of the map that you forgot to explore. The action, though, is thankfully much improved over Alien, which is a good thing since this is definitely more of a fast-paced action game this time. Dredd feels faster and more fluid than Ripley ever did, but there's still some of that trademark probe software jankiness here. Mostly thanks to Dredd's very smooth animations, making everything feel more drawn out than it should be. Especially the hand-to-hand combat, which really just mostly feels like you're flailing wildly in the air at times. Plus, the duck here does that weird thing where it scrolls the screen down every time you press it, and that sucks because there are a lot of times when you need to duck over and over, making it look like the screen is just kind of having a spasm while it bobs up and down. Still though, I was having fun shooting through criminal scum once I got the hang of the controls. Especially since Judge Dredd stays true to the character by letting you arrest some of those criminals instead of just blasting them across the pavement. Doing so gets you a higher point total at the end of the level, plus some bonus items if they happen to have any on them. I love that they put this mechanic in the game at all, but I wish it had more of an impact on gameplay besides just points and items. Again, if there is more to this, then let me know in the comments, but overall I couldn't find anything else on it. But as someone that always wanted a more action-oriented version of Alien 3, well, this is basically it, just in Judge Dredd form. It takes the basic formula of Alien 3's mission system and distills it down into smaller, more focused chunks with individual levels, and I love that. I know if I'd rented this one as a kid, I would have had a blast with it. Unfortunately though, this game came out in like 1995, so I wasn't even looking for Super NES games at the time. But if you missed out on this one too and really liked Alien 3, then I highly suggest checking out this underrated Stallone Super NES gem. Stargate for the Super NES is yet another probe software game that's actually a lot better than you'd think it is. This one wasn't hugely recommended in the previous video, but a few people did say how much they enjoyed it back in the day. And yes, my video store did have this one because I remember seeing it. But it's another game that I just kind of passed on for fear that it was another bad movie game cash-in. But as it turns out, I was wrong on this one too. Out of all the probe games that we've covered, Stargate is probably the most unique. While I just talked about how Judge Dredd was a more focused mission-based game, Stargate instead goes for the more large open stages that you can openly explore kind of thing. Like how in the first part of the game it has you finding your lost soldiers by exploring desert caves and some ruins. There are more than a few different places that you'll need to explore to find them all, and you can access them whenever you want. And most of the areas are designed well enough that you usually know where you've been and where you need to go. Except when it isn't, like how you have to just know that this door at the end of these ruins will not open until you find all the soldiers. But there's really nothing telling you, at least that I saw, that this is where you need to go whenever you accomplish that. You just kind of have to figure it out on your own. Besides little things like that though, each area has been really fun to explore. You'll even be talking to other characters that give you these missions, along with loosely guiding you on where you need to go next. It's probably a little closer to Alien than Judge Dredd just due to how open the levels are, but it also does that Judge Dredd thing where you'll just switch to an action stage in between the larger stages. And personally, I actually feel like Stargate has the better overall pace to it than the other two, since I played this game for a solid 2 hours without even realizing it. And after I got used to how it wanted me to do things, I didn't mind it at all. But while Stargate is better than I expected it to be, I kind of feel like this one isn't quite up to the same level of quality in other areas. It's definitely the stiffest of their games so far as the action goes, and that's not a good thing considering that none of their games feel like a top-tier action masterpiece. There's usually always some awkwardness to the movement and action in a probe software game, and Stargate is by far the worst in that regard. This is another area where Stargate feels a little closer to Alien 3, since you only get one weapon throughout the entire game and it totally just feels like the machine gun from Alien. Except here, it's a little harder to tell what you're actually hitting, since enemies come at you from just about every single angle most of the time. So it can kind of be hard to judge where your bullets are even going, since you can't actually see them. And really, that wouldn't be too bad, except for the fact that just about every enemy in this game likes to make a beeline straight for your crotch. So you're just kind of sitting there doing this awkward dance back and forth, trying to figure out if you're even hitting the enemy at all. Even the graphics and animation in this one isn't as impressive as their other games. The animation is really good, but it definitely has more of that generic rotoscoped look to it this time, even more so than Alien did. There's also some stuff that just looks kinda weird, like how your character looks blurry when they're tightrope walking. I'm not even sure how they managed to do that. The stage variety is also at an all-time low here, with like 80% of the game taking place in the same 3 to 4 different environments, with only the end of the game really mixing it up with more sci-fi settings from the movie. And even a full-on Super Star Wars-like vehicle level that actually features some fun but very janky dogfighting in a glider. It's not bad, but I think overall there's just less of an artistic identity to Stargate. Especially when you look at stuff like Alien 3's cold and imposing levels, or even Judge Dredd's grimy comic book look. You instantly get a thing that we in the art community like to call a vibe. And Stargate just really doesn't have that, unless you just really like the color brown. In the end though, I still had a lot of fun with Stargate. It's a really neat little game based on a movie that I think deserved a lot more attention than it got. And I think the game deserves more attention as well. For as many 16-bit games where everyone just moans about how it's just another platformer, Stargate is at least doing something different. It may not be the best playing or looking game out of all of these probe software games we've looked at, but it's got some good personality to it. And it really tries to integrate the movie's plot and its characters into the game in some fun and unexpected ways. So if you're like me and you're a fan of the movie and never played this Super NES game, I think it's worth checking out. This is one that Anubis would definitely approve of. And I think that's gonna do it for the movie games this week. Honestly, I didn't know what I was expecting with this one, and usually that's not a good thing when you're making a video like this. I usually want to have some sort of preconceived notion of where I'm gonna go before I get started. But since I was listening to all of you for this video, I was really hoping for the best. Not that your recommendations are bad, but I mean it is YouTube and some of you guys can be a little sus at times, especially with game recommendations. Thankfully, you guys did a great job this time, since all of these were pretty dang good. In fact, you did so good that I'd like to see more in the comments below. And while you're letting me know which game to check out, do me a favor and leave me a like on this video if you happen to enjoy it. And maybe even a sub if you found a new game that you want to check out. But that's gonna do it for me this week. Check back next week when I got a bunch of Super NES games that I think deserve a second chance. But until then, thanks for watching, guys.